all the anti-gun stuff and the communism and the bombers and the criminals and the mobsters and the...
Well, you can see why he wants gun control, because he knows that there will be opposition. And let's go back to, you've obviously talked about Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. This is what the guy taught at the University of Chicago. He represented them as an attorney. He gave them millions of bucks.
Yeah, Saul Alinsky, close buddies with Barack Obama. And folks, you can't make this up. Larry even has a copy of it. Break down. I mean, again, another one of these guys. Tell him.
Well, Alinsky was a communist who saw that it would be more effective, rather than charging the barricades with a couple of flintlocks, better to just take the culture from the top down. This is something that has been very effectively put forth by communists in this century, well, in the 20th century, now 21st century. And so Alinsky wrote these rules for radicals to teach how to lie, how to deceive. He said, stop looking like hippies, dress like I do. He looked like Mr. Peepers, harmless little guy with his bespectacled face. And that way you can infiltrate. When Obama briefly had a job in New York City at a law firm, he described himself as, I felt like I was behind enemy lines. Well, that's right out of Saul Alinsky. Alinsky is lie to get whatever you want, because if you've dedicated your book to Lucifer openly because Lucifer figured out how to lie to get power, then that's exactly what Alinsky's all about.
Well, let me stop you. Let's go back over that. Every time you really study Lenin, or you study Stalin, or you study the East German leaders, or you study the communists here, and I've known them personally, they'll be wearing big red pentagram shirts. They'll be Hail Satan right in front of you, and then laughing, and then the communists always call themselves anarchists. They're into deception. They're into layers. But when you get to the core, they will tell you, I worship Lucifer. This is a Luciferian operation, and a bunch of them dedicate their books to it. The Theosophic Society dedicates it to that. I mean, just the public just can't get their mind around it. Explain it to them.
Well, what Alinsky did was to get a bunch of disciples like Bill Ayers, who still is a professor at the University of Chicago in education.
Yeah, let's make this clear. He can blow cops' faces off. They killed people, hundreds of bombings associated with them. And then remember, Bill Clinton let a bunch of them go?
You betcha.
With his part. I mean, they're not playing games, folks. They'll line your family up and gun you down in a minute.
They will, when they have the opportunity. They've been relatively transparent, apparently passive lately, because they, again, rules for radicals. There's another way to do it that's better than getting yourself shot. Wait till you get the guns and then you do the shooting. And so that's what the game has been. And Ayers saw that if he was part of a cultural revolution from the top down, which is something that was probably first put forth by an Italian communist, Gramsci, in the last century, studied by Hillary Clinton as well as Saul Alinsky. Then you get to the point where you fool people into thinking that you're just a progressive social reformer, and then when it's too late, you got all the levers of power, bang, then you let them have it. That's what's underway. Ayers has been transforming Chicago and national education a la Cuba. The guy is an open communist. He's even on occasion called himself a communist.
And the elite, the big money, is putting it all behind Obama. There's a good chance that they're going to give him full power. I mean, all the experts I've had on, historians, are saying the central government's gearing up for mass purges. Then they just hand the power to Obama and they do it.
It could be an extraordinary shift to dictatorship in this country, because Obama has clearly showed by a lifelong attachment to either Palestinian terrorists or American terrorists, communist, violent people, and all of them rather exceptionally clever, I would say. Look how far the guy's gotten with really a pretty thin resume.
Yeah, but here's the deal. It doesn't matter what president it is the last 20 years. More power. They're getting rid of posse comitatus.
Yep.
The governor, as you know, 3 months ago in Illinois said we're going to use the National Guard for door-to-door gun confiscation. I mean, it's really happening. And so all these right-wing neocons said, let Bush do whatever he wants. We kept telling him, hey, that power is going to get passed on to the Democrats.
That's right.
That's going to get handed over. Here we go.
The question to ask when our guy, quote unquote, is president is, would you really want that power in Hillary Clinton's or now Barack Obama's hands? And if the answer is, well, that'll never happen, would you want it in those hands? And that's what was never asked. Well, we were just handing power over, and there it went. So, yeah, it's been a bipartisan groundwork preparation for this moment, and if Obama pulls it off, you can. Here's a scenario that bothers me. The polls at the moment are tight. Let's say they're accurate, which may or may not be true. If they were, say the guy loses by a few points. Typically, even with Reagan, people would not tell the truth to pollsters, and Reagan, first time out, was supposed to lose by 4 or 5 points, won by 10. What if something like that were to happen in this election? I'll tell you, look at Kenya to find out what's going to happen in January and February in this country.
Because it was the Obama office, senatorial office, advising them on how to do this.
Absolutely. They were aware of the plan. They didn't disavow the plan. No, they concurred with the plan. And this is right out of Saul Alinsky, frankly.
And there's a reverse option here as well. The neocons could use the riots to bring in their own martial law. If it's McCain that wins. I mean, we're in between a rock and a hard place here.
We are between a rock and a hard place. The one difference is that the poor Christians, the Kikuyu in Kenya, still carry on the tradition of British disarmament of the people. Well, they're trying to do that here, but they ain't got there yet.
And gun sales are up by 10%. The people are buying guns and ammo so you can't even find them some places.
I want to tell you, I had a call from she's a conservative, a nice Jewish lady, never wanted a gun. She's retired, living with her husband in a gated community. And she said, I am scared to death if this guy wins. She said, what kind of a gun should I get? I've never had one before.
No, all the liberals I know are finally breaking their conditioning and buying guns. Literally, they finally get it. You can't trust government, whether it's Republican or Democrat. We're in trouble.
Well, it will be a glorious time for a period for the gun stores. Ammo's already been tight before this, and it's going to probably get tighter. And if somebody's concerned as we are, and they don't think they have enough, then I would say this is the time to go shopping. And for sure, after Tuesday, if Obama's the guy, you know what's going to happen.
Massive gun control. And if he loses, rioting. You think there's going to be rioting? The police do. There's a bunch of articles about that.
They're wisely preparing for it, but of course, the police were prepared for rioting by the time it hit Washington, D.C. back in the late 60s, and I lived out in the suburbs at that time, and that's when I finally connected dots. I was still in graduate school, and they said on the radio, they were probably a little bit more candid then than they are now, well, we're not sure that we can contain the rioting, and it may go out such and such these major arteries. Well, golly, I lived right off of one of those major arteries, and I thought, I don't know much about guns, but I'll bet you a shotgun would be good for a mob coming on my house and my young family. So I went into a gun store. It was before the Gun Control Act. It was actually a sporting store. And I bought a shotgun, no questions asked, no record kept. Can you imagine? It was still relatively, at that point, as far as guns, a free country.
And they used the rioting to crack down on the citizens and try to restrict our Second Amendment.
Those very same riots were used to push through the Gun Control Act of 1968.
Remember the Korean shopkeepers, just less than a dozen of them held off thousands burning and pillaging when the police stood down, and that's why the Second Amendment's so important.
And those were Uzi semi-automatics with nice, long, nasty-looking magazines then, and it was just the intimidation factor of the thugs seeing what was waiting for them, and it was dramatic. The thugs would burn even a building right next to the one the Koreans were guarding, but the ones the Koreans were guarding were unscathed. Imagine.
Well, I tell you, folks come riding through my neighborhood. I'm not. If I point a gun at somebody and pull the trigger, I'm not just going to shoot in the air. And that's I can't imagine. I mean, it's not going to be.
When you're in
my HK-91 is going to really give them a problem.
When you're in a self-defense situation, firing a warning shot could be very dangerous to you, because that may be the last thing you ever do. They may turn right on you and shoot you. So, if you have a chance to kill the snake, you take the first chance you get.
Well, that's assault with a deadly weapon, running around burning stuff.
It definitely is, and you're in the right state. You've got a very good law for protecting your castle, and if you were to be anywhere on your property when such a scenario might unfold, I don't really think there'd be any questions asked. They know that no jury in Texas would come down.
Well, that's why if things burn, it's going to be in the cities where they've disarmed the public.
Absolutely.
Larry Pratt, fire out the website for folks that want to get involved in the front lines.
Go to gunowners.org. That's where you can sign up for our email alerts and get the Bitter Klinger T-shirt. Probably want to have it after the election.